sleigh. Red suit smelling like sawdust. He's been grinding all day. North Pole shop lights buzzing. Elves lined up in row. Safety goggles and coffee. Watching that red beam glow. Sleigh bells and laser beams. Hey, Santa's burning up your dreams. From candy canes to steel keychains. He's etching every name it says. Sleigh bells and laser beams.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Santa and the Maker. So this is episode 3. Hope everybody's doing all right. We've got a special guest this evening. This guest claims to make everything, and from what we've seen so far, he seems like he does. So we'll talk to him here. We'll go ahead and bring him on right quick. Steve from Steve Makes Everything is here with us this evening, and so he has his own YouTube page, and he's also co-host with Rick with Shop Talk Live. And so we appreciate you coming on, Steve.
No problem. It was good to get the invite. Thanks.
Well, you're very welcome. So how's your day been so far? Or is that a trick question?
Yeah, just chaos.
So, well, I understand. So you're a busy man. So, but if this is the first time you're on here, what we do is we talk to the actual maker. We find out exactly where they came from and a little bit about them, and then on top of that, we find out what they ultimately ended up where they are right now. So, Steve, we'll start with the very very simple one. Is basically, where were you born at?
I was born just north of Ottawa in Canada.
Okay. So, did your parents grow up there, or
Yeah,
or how?
Yeah. My parents moved around. My father was in the Air Force early in his career, so they moved around. But I was stuck in the middle of the country where it was either too hot or too cold.
Right. So I think I'd rather have the warm than I would the cold, to be honest with you, even though, Santa's here. So tell you said your father was in the military. Tell us a little bit about your parents. So, you did a lot of moving around, and I assume.
I didn't move around. They moved around, and then when they
Okay.
settled down, they had kids. So
Right. Okay. So
my mother was a nurse. Well, is a nurse. Well, she's retired now for many years, but and my father was an engineer, electrical engineer. Well, broadcast engineer. He worked in television.
So was he any influence for what later came in your life?
I would have to say yes, but I can't pinpoint anything. I mean, when you're kind of working with your father, when you're young, you want to help, and you tend to learn to think a certain way, very analytical in my case. So
I understand. So when where'd you go to high school at?
like what school?
Well, yeah, I've got a follow-up question based off of that.
Oh, I went to my high school doesn't exist anymore. I went to a high school called Champlain High School. Champlain, Samuel D. Champlain was a early discoverer in eastern part of the country. So,
right. So as far as your crafting that you do now, did you have any interest? I know you went into engineering as well, but did you have any crafting back in high school, or was there something there that set you on this course?
Yeah, I mean, I worked. I worked. I went to school at a time when we still had shops in schools.
Right.
They're pretty much gone now. Like you can't have kids trying to work on power tools anymore, it seems, which is too bad. Which is actually one of the things that drove me to create a channel in the first place. But yeah, I took auto shop and electrical and mechanical engineer or mechanical drafting, and if it was technical, I took it.
Right. And then, was there anything in particular that you gravitated more than the others?
Well, I ended up spending my career in hardware and computer hardware and software. So
right,
I'd have to say that one.
So that leads into the next question I had for you. Basically, is your college experience. I'm assuming you went to college, or did you go in the
Yeah,
military, or did you both, or
yeah, no college,
college
electrical,
and
electrical engineering.
electric? So
But
and
I haven't done. I did once I graduated. I kind of hung around in embedded systems for a while and developed a chip, and that was kind of the end of my hardware career, because as I was developing a chip, I was using a lot of tools that were really just like programming, right? And I went, oh, why don't I just do software instead? Because I like the programming aspect. So that's basically, I spent 35 years, building software for a better world.
Yeah, well, I originally had thought about in high school myself going into it was DeVry University. They had a computer programming program that I thought about going into back in those days, but engineering kind of, or the drafting side kind of is what got me more interested, I guess, because as you probably know, back in those days, we were in the infancy of that, growing up with the programming and how you did that. I'll never forget the very first one I did was a little green um, uh, rocket that basically was pixelated and it rolled up the top of the screen. That was the first thing I ever took and actually programmed.
My very first computer experience was, I'm trying to think how old I would have been. 7, 8, 9, 10, probably 11. I went into a Radio Shack, and they had the Radio Shack Model 1 there, and my first attempt at programming was to go up to the keyboard and say play blackjack, and it's like no, there's a whole thing you have to do. It can't just be that simple.
Yeah, we had talked about one time, I think on Shop Talk Live, a little bit about computers, and I said the very first one I had was a Tandy TRS-80. So that was my first introduction into it with the cassette and all that kind of stuff.
I recently, so for my very first computer that I owned, I left it at my parents' place when I went to school, and then I got a job, and I never actually moved back home. So it was there. And then one day I said to my father, do you still have my old computer? And he said, oh, it's around here somewhere. But I know he threw it out. So I spent 50 years looking for another one.
Right.
And I found one this year. Actually, I found two of them. And I have it here, but I have a simpler version of it, which is this one. My very first computer was an RCA Cosmac VIP. This is actually a new generation of it, but hex keypad. There was no real keyboards, no program, like you programmed in machine code. So a whole bunch of hex numbers. Those were the days.
Oh yeah. So like I said, in its infancy, we didn't know where it was going to go from there. We just thought we were having fun at that point. But
yeah.
So hey everybody, I'm seeing your chat over there, and hello to everybody. So like I said, we've got Steve here. So let me ask you this: what was you talked a little bit about getting into shop and and the auto mechanic and different things. What was your actual first craft? When did you actually start doing some kind of craft?
Oh, it would be woodworking, because my father had a big woodworking shop, right? He was actually in his kind of side hustle. He was a beekeeper, so he made a lot of the materials for beehives. And right. I kind of got in at that point and started doing a lot of woodworking. But I was always doing something electronic too from the time I was. Because he was an engineer, he also had a lot of electrical components and things. So I built a crystal radio, and it was a lot of fun. It didn't work very well, but
So well, as long as you got a signal, that was working. So
yeah.
So was there a part of the woodworking you liked? Was it turning? Was it building? Case type? What was it in particular you liked about that?
So this is probably the first kind of epiphany I had, was woodworking is just using a bunch of tools, right? Just like lasers or CNCs or anything. It's basically what I do now. I use a bunch of tools, but that part isn't actually interesting. What's interesting is what you can do with those tools. Right. So,
Yeah,
I mean, when I'm like 10 years old, what I can do is I can make a bookcase or a box of some sort. But that was kind of the realization that it wasn't just, oh, let's collect a whole bunch of tools. It was, let's use tools to do something, right? To make a difference somehow.
Yeah.
And in my case, it was a difference for me because I needed a place to store books, right? So.
Yeah, the very first thing that I ever that I could create, so I did some casework and stuff like that because like you, my dad also did a bunch of woodworking and my grandfather did too. So that was kind of what I grew up with a little bit. But the thing was, is the first time I was able to turn something on a lathe. And it didn't have to be anything that had any use at all. You basically started with either a square or a round piece. And when you got done, you had something. It had shape to it. It had some kind of form. And I really got into enjoying that part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. My father didn't have a lathe then. He had one. Well, he's retired now. He lives in an apartment, but when he had a shop, he did have a lathe in later years. But by then I had already had my own lathe in my own shop. So I have a good friend who's a wood turner, and I've now gotten him into lasers actually, because whenever you do the kind of job I do on YouTube where you review a lot of stuff, you need places to store it, right? So it's like, hey, here's another laser. Use this for a while, and so he's gotten into lasers, but my standing joke with him was, all you know how to do is make things that are round. Now he's actually an artisan, like he can make crazy stuff, but he just makes things that are round, as far as I'm concerned.
Well,
he's been trying to convince me to let him do some tutorial lessons to get me back into wood turning, but it's just not going to happen. I just don't have time.
So where did you shift from your little bit of woodworking to getting into some of the stuff that you do now, the lasers and the 3D printers? At what point was that after you retired from your career, during your career?
No.
How did that happen?
So my first job was actually at a company that built industrial lasers.
Right.
And industrial and scientific lasers. And so, what we know of as a CO2 laser, like the one behind me here today, the ones I worked on were these gigantic things that were like the size of a car, right? And they were pretty impressive as far as power goes. But so that's kind of where I got into lasers, was literally my first job. And I did that for probably the first 7 years of my career, and then went more into like hardcore application software, I'd say business software. Mm-hmm. But while I was there, I was building software for embedded systems. So my crowning achievement there was using machine code or assembly code to develop a floating point math library so that this laser could calculate. It was a variable frequency laser, so it could calculate frequency, wave numbers, wavelength, all these things in down to like 5 decimal places. Now keep in mind, those days, that was in early 80s, an 8-bit processor was all you had, and it had no floating point anything, right? So it was a lot of interesting math to make all that happen. I was impressed. I impressed myself if no one else.
Yourself on the back. Yeah, there you go. So at what point did it become, I'm going to start doing this a little bit as something at home too?
I always had a shop. Now I didn't have early on. I didn't have any, like CO2 lasers were just coming into the not residential, but hobby space, we'll say. And I didn't have one, but a buddy of mine had one, so I used his a lot. But I used to fly radio controlled airplanes, and for me, the flying wasn't actually that interesting. Designing things that would fly was interesting. And I would design all these things and I'd hand cut a few, but then I'd take the AutoCAD design over to his place and dump a DXF file onto his laser and cut out a bunch of parts. And so that was probably the first brush with consumer lasers, we'll say.
Right.
Because lasers I worked on in the past, the beam was like this big around, and it was
not something you could carry home.
No. No, and it wasn't really much good for cutting out a piece of balsa wood, because we used to test those big industrial lasers. They're 1 joule lasers, so you test a CO2 laser by putting a cinder block in front of it and engraving in a cinder block or cutting a hole through it.
I started to say or vaporize the top of it, one of the two.
Yeah, they were impressive lasers. That was back in the Ronald Reagan Star Wars days, so we got to get involved in a little bit of that for with some of these big lasers. So
right, it sounds like fun, actually. If from my perspective, so
that was my ultimate goal, was to always have fun. And I mean, I turned down jobs that would have paid me a whole lot more money, but they weren't going to be fun. It was always, and I didn't want to kind of corner myself into a particular role. So I did hardware for a while. I did software for a while. I worked on lasers. I worked in the atomic energy industry for several years. And then I went back to software again. So. But the whole focus there was have fun. If you have fun, and money comes, right? And
well, not to mention you were having a diverse career. You were able to shift from one to another, so it always stayed interesting.
Yeah, well, and you didn't obsolete yourself either, right? Like I could have been the best assembly language programmer in the world, but where would that put me now, right? I would have been starving for the last 30 years. So. So I was always eager to learn new things.
Yeah, well, that's kind of funny that you say that, because I've been in civil engineering now 26 years, and civil engineering doesn't change that much, but there's the new technologies that come out are usually the one things you have to learn. And I'm about 5 years away from retiring, and I'm getting to the point now where I don't want to learn anymore. I've learned enough. If I can make it 5 more years, then I want to say, okay, I'm good.
Well, yeah, I don't think. Well, hopefully you don't get to the point where you go, that's it. I know enough.
Well, no, because what I'm saying is I don't want to learn anything new in the civil engineering. I want to learn about lasers. I want to learn about 3D printers, all these other things. So, but
and that's kind of how I spent my whole career was okay, it's time to learn something new.
Yeah.
And then I'd go find a job that did that, right? That's how I ended up in nuclear engineering for several years. Still doing software for the most part, but it was all around high reliability, and the blue screen of death means something completely different in a reactor, so
that's almost a one and done, right?
Yeah. So I wrote quite a bit of software for Canadian reactors, and they're all still here. So
that's a good thing, sir. So I've heard you tell the story, but maybe a couple of the people that are on here haven't. How did you go from starting that as doing some of the consumer stuff to actually the YouTube? Because that's what a lot of people know you from.
So we had a family friend who, one of her kids was pretty young. He was about 12 years old when he started a YouTube channel, and by the time his YouTube channel was doing playthroughs of Minecraft when Minecraft was new. And 4 years into YouTube, he bought his first house at the age of 16 and paid cash for it. And I thought, okay, so I didn't ever do YouTube for money, but I did it because I thought it's easy. because, hey, this 12-year-old can do YouTube. It's got to be easy. It's not.
No.
As you're finding out, right? As you're getting
Yes.
started, it's like, what a
Yes.
hill to climb. And it just, but that was part of the intrigue. Was I just woke up one day and said, it was actually over Christmas in 2019, because I started my channel in 2020, January 1st. And over Christmas, I just said, that's it. I'm going to start a YouTube channel. And I did. And again, with the mental, comprehension, I'll say that YouTube was easy. And
So
it's not.
what was your goal at that point with YouTube? Just to teach, or?
Yeah. So what I saw, my last several jobs in my working life, I was either an executive or senior management of some sort. And I saw a lot of young people coming into software who were smart, but they didn't have the right motivation, and they weren't going to ever become makers of anything. So, and some of them surprised me because they have, but so I spent a lot of the last part of my career getting those people engaged and kind of getting them on, we'll say, the right path, whatever that is, just on a path where they could achieve something that's personally rewarding, certainly financially rewarding for a company. But so when I left work and I retired, which means I worked twice as much as I did when I was working, but I decided that my mission was going to be to create the next generation of makers, or help them, enable them, we'll say. And so, like I said, I know lots of people who start YouTube for money. They're probably sadly disappointed because YouTube doesn't actually pay that much, but that wasn't ever my goal. I still haven't taken a dime out of my YouTube earnings. They all get plowed back into my channel. It's really just to make sure that there's going to be people, because I'm not going to be around forever as much as I'd like to be. But the world can't stop ticking, because like I'm the last year of baby boomers, and a lot of baby boomers were engineering types after World War II. I know nothing about World War II because I was in the last year, but those people tended to have a maker mindset. And, I want to make sure that there's another generation at least where there's a maker mindset. And very disappointing these days with everybody playing video games for a living, right? But
that's what I was getting ready to say. Was I see it from my perspective of working in engineering as well, is the fact that they see these computer programs and this kind of stuff, and a lot of times, and I hate to say it, the colleges, to a degree, they push all that, because they need to learn it. And my philosophy has always been that college is to teach you how to learn. That's ultimately the goal in college, is to teach you how to learn.
That's its goal. That's its whole goal, right?
But the thing is that a lot of the kids were coming out and, I can take this 3D software and I can do this and I can do this, and then you would ask them, well, okay, why or how or what are you trying to achieve? And that was the answer that they didn't have.
Yeah.
And so I understand fully, because we're going through that transition now. As like I said, I've got about 5 more years. The young guys are coming in with the updated 3D stuff, and I know how to do all that. But the thing is they're going to use it for the next 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's moving a lot faster than it did, right?
Yeah.
But they need to be prepared to get to a state where, okay, I know this much, but now all of that's useless. I need to learn something else, right? And like we're going through that.
But what happens if the computer goes down?
Yeah, well, we're going through the whole churn of education with AI now, right? Like it's going so fast, and it's virtually impossible to keep up to it. But it's, but I think the people, certainly the kids coming out of universities now, they think very differently than I thought when I got out of university.
Right.
Like when I graduated, it was like, what can I do to change the world? Right. And, kids today, and it'll sound bad, so I don't want to insult anybody, but kids today seem to graduate and go, how can I earn lots of money? And I get it, because, food's expensive, cars are expensive, houses are expensive. Just waking up in the morning costs you money, right? So I don't think they were raised with that mentality. I think society is driving them to that mentality.
Yeah, and you see a lot. You don't see like I said, I'm 26 years in. You very rarely see where somebody has committed a lot of time in the younger generation before they move on to something else. Anyway.
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, I was
they're
like
constantly
that,
trying
right?
to
So
evolve.
I can kind of relate to them wanting to do something for 5 minutes and then do something else.
Right.
But it's, you have to build a skill set. And that's the thing that I think doesn't get, I'll say, embossed on the typical students coming out of universities. And it's disappointing, right? Because you see people who are really smart, and that they could actually build things that matter, but they never develop that skill.
I think it's the reason that Mike Rowe has such success that he's got. I mean, when you look at trade skills that people are not doing anymore, I mean, I can't speak for you, but I think based on what you said earlier about your dad, you're probably in the same boat I am. You learned how to build, you learned how to do these kind of things, and you constantly were trying to learn those things. And college was pushed to the point that, at some point kids were like, well, I'd rather go to college than I would be a plumber or an electrician or something like that. So, that has a little bit of bearing on it as well.
Yeah, it's starting to flip now. There's not like I don't know what it's like in the US, but in Canada now, trades are paying crazy money right now, because there was this whole generation that didn't show up, right? And now there are people who go, I don't want to be an engineer, I want to fix things. And so they're starting to come back, and they discover, hey, if you want to be, my nephew is a plumber, and you discover, hey, this not only, I mean, yeah, it can be a dirty job. He does new construction, so it's not so bad, but he gets paid now, right? Which for a while there, I think trades were almost looked down on. And it's like, oh, you don't even have a university degree. Yeah, no, I got a degree in life. Is
exactly. So, it's like Sandy says, she's a baby boomer, and it's her satisfaction, it's self-satisfaction, not in money. So
exactly the same thought, right? It's like I retired early because I had enough money, but I worked my ass off to make it happen. And I had parents who taught me how to save. You get to spend this one, but you put this one away, right? and I mean, like, I look at my own kids. I have two boys, and they're in their 30s now, but I don't think they know how to save. Like, it's just like, I try to teach them, but they don't have that mindset. It's like I don't know, socially rewired for something else. And when times get tough, and I mean, granted, I haven't seen any tough times in my life, right? Because I was born in the 60s, and the 60s were like the best economic times in the world, right? But so I never really had any economic hardship to survive. But yeah, there you go.
Jack wants to ask you a question.
So yeah, it's a little frustrating to see my own kids don't save money, even though I've said, like, put it away. And
well, the one thing, and I'm not here to give any life lessons by no means, um, the one thing that my wife and I found when we moved 5 years ago from the western part of the state to the eastern part of the state, it was a situation where we said, we're always going to have bills. We're always going to have this. Let's go live where we want to live while we're young enough to do it.
Yeah.
And so if you ever constantly are waiting until you can afford something, though, sometimes that never happens. And I kind of watched my dad go through some of that, back in his day. But at the same time, he was living, a good life out of what he was doing as well. So it's I think it works both ways to a degree.
Yeah, I moved to the East Coast about 7 years ago, and the weather's much nicer here. Like the winter we get snow, but it's usually it'll snow 6 inches and then the next day it'll rain or whatever. So you don't really get a lot of accumulation. But summers aren't so hot because I live 2 miles from the Atlantic Ocean, and the Gulf Stream is, offshore about 50 miles. So it's very moderating. But when I moved here because I wanted to get out of the city. Like I lived in, and it was just getting crazy. And I lived in a very nice house, but in a very snooty neighborhood, which, I described my neighborhood as a place where there were more Ferraris than Fords. And I just couldn't deal with that anymore. It's just like, okay. So I said, my wife and I were sitting out on our deck one morning having a coffee. And I said, look, you hate the winters here, or you hate the summers here because they're too hot. I hate the winters because it's too cold. Why don't we just move? And we packed up, and the East Coast in Canada is, I'd say, sort of economically balanced like Maine for the rest of the country. Maine is a fairly, poor state compared to, say, California, for example. But it's like that here too. And, Maine is not very far away from me. So, when we moved here, I was still working and my wife still works. But I mean, our household income was like 8 times what the provincial household income average was. So it was like, wow, we're living like royalty. But that wasn't the issue. The issue was it was relaxing, right? Like I wasn't even moved in, and I met all my neighbors, and
And the hustle and bustle.
help. I said, well, I got a tractor. I can smooth out your gravel for you. You don't have to shovel it by hand. And so, it just kind of, was laid back, and that's that's kind of what I wanted. Now my wife is kind of longing for the return to the city, because her son and his fiance are going to get married and have kids very soon, and she wants to be the grandmother, right? So, but
Mansour here is asking you what part of the East Coast you were living.
I live just east of Halifax. And east isn't the ocean. East is Halifax is kind of laying on its side. So it's actually, I live about 25 minutes from downtown Halifax, but it's like I live in paradise, basically. I don't have to have I don't have to have a lot where my house is, where I can touch my neighbor's house on both sides, and so I have a couple of acres, and it's chill. When I get frustrated, I can go to the ocean and watch the surf come in. So
when we moved here, we moved from a rural area that basically I had 7 acres at that time, and it was 30 minutes before you could get to town. Okay. And so when we moved into a subdivision here, and I shouldn't tell this story on myself, but I will. When we looked at the house that I'm in right now, we were standing here going through, and at that time they were still putting up sheetrock and things like that. And I looked out the window and I saw a Domino's car go by the house. And so I hollered to my wife and I said, honey, they delivered directly to your door. This is the house we've got to have. I don't have to go meet anybody or do anything else. So but that was the moment the house was sold to me. So,
The nearest pizza place to me is literally the end of my street, but I live
that's great.
I live in suburbia. Like it's my nearest neighbor is probably 300 feet away from me. So
Right. So, well, I'm 15 minutes. I can be at either part of town. So that's I've enjoyed the convenience and that kind of thing. But you did YouTube for a while. At what point did you start to co-host with Rick?
So I didn't even know Rick. I guess it's probably 2 years ago now. This guy shot me an email and said, "Hey, I'm trying to put together a live stream of tech people. Are you interested?" And my first reaction was, "Oh, who's this crazy person? I'm not going to talk to him." And then I checked him out. I checked out his website or his YouTube site, and I thought, what the heck? I'll have a conversation with him. And
Right.
and yeah, he seemed like a good guy, and we just kind of clicked. So
Yeah. So and so it was basically just a cold call is what it amounted to at that time. So
yeah,
um,
yeah.
so
Well, it was an email, but yeah, it was cold.
so, so you progressed pretty much through, and I'm assuming you probably started with lasers as far as things you were doing at home. Did you go to 3D printers after that, or did you go to CNCs?
I
How was that
I
progression through what you've
actually
done?
I actually went. I was on 3D printers first, like as far as like tech for shops. Um, so I had a bunch of 3D printers. I had a couple. Well, I mean, at the time, only Creality was kind of out there. There was ANET or somebody else, some other weird company. Um, so I had a couple of Creality printers, and they were like, it was amazing what they could do. But at the same time, you look at one of those today and you go, man, that thing is terrible.
Yeah.
But I started with that, and then when I moved here, I have my shop is 25 by 35, and I needed to put something in it, so I decided I was going to get a CO2 laser, because that takes me back to my past, and started doing a bit of laser engraving with that, and some woodworking, and then just now I have a really nice table saw. I've got my saw stop, but I use it a lot less than I use pretty much any laser in my shop. But you still have to cut material up every once in a while. So it just kind of transitioned to mostly shop tech as opposed to shop work.
Right. Yeah. So let something else do the work for a little bit. I understand. So how did you get into the machine testing? How did that start coming about?
I didn't seek out any hardware, like any review work, but geez, I forget their name. Ortur reached out to me one day. I had, I don't know, maybe 2,000 subscribers at that point, and Ortur sent me a message and said, "Hey, we've got this 5-watt diode laser." Now, I'd already had a CO2 laser, so it wasn't completely foreign, but I had already done a review of my CO2 laser, and it was my second video, and it kind of went viral the second time, and I thought, okay, I was right. This YouTube thing really is easy. And it wasn't. But then Ortur sent me a message and said, "Hey, we've got this Ortur Affero 5-watt laser." And I still actually have it. It's still sitting in storage, but I still have it. And they said, "Can you do a review on it?" And I went, well, okay, I don't know what a review is, but sure, I'll give it a shot. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. And it's what, and this will happen to you. It happens to everybody, right? Who has a YouTube channel where you persist. You don't even need thousands of subscribers. It just, you do it for a while and people start to notice. And you get to the point where you have there's so many people sending you email, and you just say like, no, and half of them I don't even answer. Like I had the latest crazy thing that I was asked to review was a barber chair.
Okay.
I don't know, but e-scooters, you name it. It's like,
Yeah.
and they always start. They're all AI generated messages, right? It's like, we watch your channel and we love these videos, and they'll pick some random title for some video you did, and now we want you to test a barber chair. It's like, what the hell?
What am I supposed to
Do you
tell you?
really
It'll
watch
go
my
up and go
channel?
down, and it'll spin.
Yeah. So
Well,
now there
if
are
everybody-
things that I'll do that are kind of off the outside my regular niche. In part because I can link them back to being more useful in my shop. Robot lawnmowers are a good example, right? And I've actually got another one I'm ready to do probably next month sometime. But they're such a time saver for anyone who works in a shop.
Right.
Like I walk across my driveway in the morning to my shop, and I see my lawnmower driving by, and it's like, yeah, that saves me 3 hours right there. So so those kinds of things I will cover, but I can't really link a barber chair to anything I do in my shop.
Well, if most of you probably know, but he's went over 100,000 subscribers now, and I've put some of his information up across the ticker up top. So, if you haven't watched Steve or looked at any of his videos, go by there and see what he's got. He's very knowledgeable, and he's also very easy to understand what he's trying to explain to you.
That
and
is
then
not what my wife says.
So
I actually. So I did a rejigging of my studio recently, and my initial intent was to take a project that I built, which is this one, which is my YouTube score or subscriber count, and I was going to have this in the background of all my videos, but then I have now this background. But I will do a video on this because it's actually kind of cool, right? Because it's a manual score counter, right?
Right.
So
right.
Well,
congratulations on that. I like you said, this is not easy. It's a lot of work, and especially if you just do regular videos. Anybody who's done a regular video and just put it on Facebook or any of those things knows the amount of editing alone is frustrating and aggravating. And you do a lot of talking to a camera and then realize 2/3 of what you said you're not going to use anyway. So it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I'm at a point now where I've sort of half decided that at some point I'll find some up and coming YouTuber somebody's just getting started, and I actually thought of you, but somebody who's probably drinking from a fire hose right now as far as getting going, and just say, okay, here's what worked for me, here's what didn't work for me. Because you listen to a whole bunch of these YouTube specialist people, and there's a million channels, and they start with things like, I publish every day, or and you realize at some point all of that stuff is not right. Like, it's not right for you, right? And so there are only 4 digits there, but I built a decimal place.
Yeah. Jack says he only needs 3, maybe 4 digits for his. So we're right now. I need 2. So,
but I'm planning ahead because you can actually turn the decimal place over. So if I ever get to what is it, a million, 1.1 point, well, over a million, then I can just turn the decimal point off.
Right. What has been your most frustrating since you've started into the commercial and the teaching and all that? What's been your most frustrating thing that you've dealt with
on YouTube, or just in general?
Just in general, what either this, talking to the manufacturers or YouTube or what usually is the one that you're just like,
yeah, lots of those.
Right.
So start with the manufacturers. We're kind of in an industry where everything we make is offshore, or everything we get for equipment is offshore. Now my CNC was actually made in Canada, but almost all the lasers are coming from China or somewhere, Hong Kong, you name it. That in itself isn't the problem, but you see some really, really terrible stuff. And I see a lot less of it now because in part I'm smarter about it. But, like the Afero laser, for example, the very first one I did, it was an okay laser for the money, but it was not an okay laser. It worked, but it wasn't going to change your life, right? So you see a lot of stuff that just doesn't work well. I still see it. I had a bit of a to-do with a manufacturer, and I won't name them, but I've now killed 3 of their lasers simply by using them. It's not like I'm stressing them in a particular way. And I finally, after the 3rd one, said, look, I'm not going to do a review of your laser. I don't think anyone should buy this. It's hard, but I'm not going to recommend things on my channel. Well, I don't generally recommend things anyway, but I'm not going to review things that I know are not going to make people happy.
Right.
And or worse, are going to make them unhappy, specifically unhappy. So manufacturers, there's always manufacturers that are just super, super low quality. So they drive me crazy. YouTube specifically, or being a YouTuber, we'll say, the biggest enemy there is time. It just takes so much time. And I mean, again, I thought YouTube was easy. Right. When I make a video, especially review videos, because they're harder, but I'll spend, 15 hours of time in the shop just using it. Then another 10 or 12 hours recording B-roll for it, scripting, recording, editing is another thing that takes forever, and then you get it out. And so what looks like 8 minutes of video or 15 minutes of video is probably 40, 50 hours of work. And I keep looking at guys like Clack, right, who does great videos, and he pumps them out about 3 a week. And it's like, how do you do this, man? I can't possibly. I keep looking at my process, trying to refine it. And I'll make inroads every now and again, but there's nothing in my workflow that would make me go, okay, that's why Clack can do this and I can't. Right. And if you haven't watched Clack's channel, go watch it. It's great. He does some good stuff.
Yeah. David does a real good job, and I don't know how much he edits in there, but David almost seems like he just rolls from the very beginning all the way through.
Yeah,
sort of like what we're doing now. It's like he sits down at his computer and he just says, "Hey, today I'm going to show you," and then he just rolls through the whole thing. Now,
and
his video and stuff like that, we know he can't do that though. But
it's a skill I envy.
Yeah,
because I mean, I did this this Creality master batch filament short video today, so it's like 2 minutes long. Hey, there's Clack. He said his name 3 times. That's right. So I did this video. It's like 2 minutes. It's a 2-minute short, and it took me 3 days to make it. Now, not 3 days of 12-hour days, but it was just, and I kept going, it's 2 minutes long. Like why is this so hard? But it's all B-roll and so you're trying to get it right.
Clack said it's 25 years of teaching SWAT guys. Well, I taught in the fire service as well, so I understand that. But my problem is
I taught software engineers how to build billion-dollar products, and it was my whole last 10 years, 15 years of my career.
Well, what I was going to say, as far as me teaching, it's a set skill. that changes very little over time.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're doing these reviews and stuff, you've got a new machine, has new specs and that kind of stuff, and it's easy for me to lose track of what I was talking about or what they want as far as the spec that I need to talk about or something like that. So,
Yeah.
you do a good job, David. So,
Yeah. No argument there.
so
So it's but no matter what, it's a time issue, right? Like Clack might be able to spit out 3 videos a week, but he's eating time somewhere, right? Some time is being sacrificed for something else, and it's I was teaching engineers. Sure. I'm glad I'm not one of your SWAT guys, because they're probably pretty upset with you with that comment. But yeah, it just takes a lot of time to do YouTube stuff, right? You have to think about YouTube like it's a product and a business, and I hate thinking about YouTube that way, but that's how I've kind of gotten to the point where, like, I've made some refinements fairly recently. Like I for a while, I'd do a bunch of bullet items and then I would just talk to them, and I wouldn't have a script, no script at all. And then I would shoot all my B-roll and then talk over it. Again, no script. But now I actually do a script and then I go shoot B-roll that fits the script. And it makes better videos, I think, but it takes longer.
Yeah, you can ask a question on here. We try not to get too technical because we are talking about the maker, but as Steve has said, and I've said too, Steve has got a lot of experience in lasers and that kind of stuff. So if you've got a general question you'd like to ask, you're more than welcome to ask it. So, but let me ask you this though: what has been your most rewarding? We've talked about the most frustrating. What's your most rewarding moments that you had so far?
Again, I'll ask in post-work career or from the time I was born.
You can go as many as you want.
So while I was working, when I worked in the atomic energy industry, I did a couple of things that like legitimately saved the world. That felt kind of cool. I can't talk about some of them because I had a top secret clearance, but one of them was involving Iraq, and one was a reactor safety thing that that I was quite proud of. And
right,
and it was, you can't just kind of roam around of the world and say to anyone who will listen, "Hey, I saved the world." It's like no one believes that, right? But
yeah, sure you did.
I kind of knew the impact that it had. So work-wise, I mean, I did a lot of things actually work-wise that were rewarding, we'll say. I did a lot of mentoring, career mentoring, and I was talking to somebody I mentored from the time she graduated from university, which seems like 2 years ago, but it was probably 15 years ago now. She's now a corporate VP at IBM, which was pretty impressive. She was super smart, but I'd like to say, hey, I played a part in that. And I talked to her a couple times since she took that job, and she was pretty happy with it. And there's been a few people like that, but within my YouTube world, the most pleasurable experience is to get a positive comment, because I spent a lot of time as an engineer in a pretty high pressure industry, and you didn't get a lot of compliments from your boss, from your customers, from nobody, right? It's like,
you do not.
I know you showed up for work yesterday, but what are you going to do today, right? So history.
We appreciate you doing this. Now here's the same thing, just do it differently this time.
Yeah. So So it was nice in YouTube land to do a video and then have somebody leave a comment to say, hey, this actually helped me.
Yeah.
And I mean, you still get the people who go, oh, you're an idiot or whatever. It's just, you have to take those. But I tend to try and respond to all of even those comments, and I try not to be snarky about stuff. I have had to ban 2 people from my channel for saying things, not to, like, if they say something about me, fine. But if they say something about, the product or whatever, it's like, that's not what my channel's for. So, if you just want to send me an email and call me whatever you want, go right ahead. But it's the channel. I usually start with a reminder that, this is my channel, not your channel. So, be polite, right? Because this channel is about teaching people things.
So Mansour was asking, he's interested in metal 3D embossed engraving and brass coins, and he's asking if the Com Marker MOPA is a good one. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a decent laser. As you can tell from behind me here, most of the stuff in my shop is Xtool now, in part because it's one common piece of software, not for every laser, but for everything in my shop almost, except for my CNC. But I do have a Com Marker B6 and quite like it. The thing before I kind of answered the question, but something for clarity, I get asked all the time, and you're probably at that point now where people are asking you, is this 60-watt MOPA laser or this 60-watt MOPA laser better? And the answer is they're the same. The same laser module is in both boxes. Like that F2 Ultra back there is a 60-watt MOPA. It uses the exact same laser module that the Com Marker does.
Yeah, and it's almost, you need the manufacturer of the module itself. Okay, this JPT or what is it? I'm drawing a blank now. Anyway, the different types. And even those are basically all the same. If it's 60 watt in theory, that's the power that it's running. So there's not going to be that much difference. It's all based off of A, what you do with it, and B, what your software will do with it.
Yeah, fiber lasers especially, there's really like 2 of note, right? Two manufacturers of the actual laser. JPT and, well, there's probably 3, I guess, but Coherent is another one. They're not quite as popular, but they make industrial lasers. I knew them as a competitor back in the 80s. And I forget the third guys. They're also not as popular as JPT. JPT owns that whole market pretty much.
Yeah. And Jack makes a good point. Actually, customer service. And that's the one, I'd say, comment you see more than anything else. Can't get customer service. You can get customer service. It was good. It was bad.
And this is something this is one of the things I've kind of taken under my personal charge, is to go at manufacturers and say, your customer support is terrible. Mm-hmm. You need to do something. And Com Marker back in their early days, their customer support wasn't great. And I said, I had a long conversation with them actually and said, you've got to fix your customer support. It's not perfect, but it's better. And you have to fix their quality, because one goes hand in hand with the other, right? If your quality is good, your customer support is a lot easier. Mm-hmm. And so I had that conversation with them, and a couple of other companies fairly recently, actually. It's just one of the things I tend to talk about because I do a bit of consulting for these companies as well. I'm doing one for a UV printer company right now. And they've been in the business for a long time, but they don't have a good track record for maintenance and support. And I had a lot of conversation with them about that.
Radu here's got his dad joke for the day. Never trust
Now
an
he
Adam.
can't
They
use
make
it
up
Wednesday.
everything.
You can't use
So-
it Wednesday.
so but no, you're talking about that. The one thing that I found, and I started with the Monport 60 watt, and you have to understand that when you send in customer service, it's going to be 24 hours before you get a response most of the time. I
Yeah.
have been lucky on several occasions that I've got an email back the same day, but I've also sent it off in the evening sometime. So that's part of the frustration. But I'll be honest, I've also not had an issue that they have not resolved. It has just taken so long in order to get that. Now, our society, of course, is everything's got to be right this second. And I understand that as well because, working in engineering, I've got to have as much information as I possibly can as soon as I can. But I think
Yeah.
that's a lot of the frustration as well.
Yeah. I mean, some companies definitely do it better. I'm sure I wasn't the only person, but I had a similar conversation with Xtool a couple of years back because their support wasn't all that great, and they said, "What is the easiest fix we can do?" I said, "Put an office in North America." And where are they now? They have a California office, right? So
Yeah, and
you're maybe
Well-
3 hours away from them at the worst. Right, I'm 4
Yeah.
hours because I hang out in the Atlantic, an extra time zone. But
when the last emails I sent, it said U.S. support to Monport. So I don't know
Yeah.
if they've actually got a physical or if they've just got a group there that they're calling their U.S. support at this point. But
yeah, no, they actually have I mean, they don't. I don't think they have offices here, but they have trained support people who cover a district, and more companies are starting to do that, which is good.
yeah,
Now I had so I'm looking at a GWIC M-Core laser right now, which is a 400 watt fiber, 80 watt CO2 laser. It's the baby version of their bigger industrial lasers. And when they sent it to me, they immediately shot me an email and said, "We're going to send somebody to install it for you." And I went, "Like, you're going to send somebody to the east coast of Canada to plug a laser in?" But so I actually got it up on the stand before their rep got here. But a very nice guy named Harvey. Well, that's his English name. He was from China, but very smart. Did a whole lot of tweaking, and it was like, wow, this is a very different experience. This is good. Because he did some things, and I looked at it and went, I might have figured that out over time, but who knows, right? I might have just complained about this laser not doing what it was supposed to do, and he was in there twiddling, and went, there you go, it's perfect now. So
that kind of leads into my next question. Where do you see your craft going next? I know that one specifically, I think, does some metal work as well. Is that correct? And with that is kind of where I started when I first started doing CNC programming and that kind of stuff. It was all metal based. The Fadal machine was the very first machine I ever did, and so that was and then they had the lathe that went with it. So I kind of understand that, and eventually I would like to get to that point where I'm doing some metal work as well. But where do you see your craft going now that you've done quite a bit?
I think at this point, so I'm kind of limited expanding my craft because my shop is just packed to the rafters right now. But I do have a metal fab now, which I love because I can work in metal and then take it over and attach a piece of laser engraved something to it, which I couldn't do before. So I think if I was pointed in a direction, the direction would be expansion. Just keep doing more, right? And at some point, I'll just say, okay, everything in here's for sale. Get rid of it all, and I'm just going to go to the beach. But I think I'm not there yet. Probably for another 8 years, maybe. But I just like to do things, and like the last thing I wanted to do when I retired was sit on the back deck and drink a beer and watch the sun go across the sky, right? It just wouldn't be my thing.
Well, that's why that's my running joke is anybody, like if you were in the fire department, police department, whatever or something like engineering, you have a type A personality. You're constantly helping, you're always going and doing something. And my wife would run me slam out of the house if I didn't have something when I retired. So that's kind of why I started, now, like I've got that 5-year window to really start figuring out when I do retire, what am I going to do? And so that's why I started early. And I think as long as you keep that mind moving and all, then your longevity is just.
And I did that too, right? By the time I retired, which is now 3 years ago, which is hard to believe it's gone that fast, but I had already
been working.
Like I already had a YouTube channel. I already had a bunch of business going, and it was, in a sense, quitting my full-time job was just something getting off my plate, right? It wasn't like I had a major life change because I was already doing half of this stuff already. I just stopped going to work and getting paid weekly. It was a pretty sizable pay cut, but at the same time, I enjoyed waking up in the morning, which when I was working, I didn't really enjoy waking up in the morning. It's like, work.
Yeah, well, I work from home now since I've moved. My office is still in the western part of the state, so it's a long drive down the hallway every morning. But that's it was totally different having to do it. And I say this, luckily when COVID came along, we found out that we really could do it, so it did help me out in that aspect. But there are times where you literally have to make yourself go sit down behind that computer and get started on your day. So
I didn't have that trouble. I was already working from home before COVID made it cool. It was just one of those things, because I had a team of, I don't know, probably 150 people, but they were scattered all over the planet, and there was no point in me being in an office because I'd be by myself, right? It wasn't sensible. So because anytime I wanted to actually meet anybody, I was on an airplane, so I already kind of understood the work from home mentality, and I actually quite enjoy it because I like to focus. And when I had an office, somebody come into my office with a cup of coffee and go, "How's it going?" It's like, okay, there's an hour I'm not getting back, right? So I was frustrated a bit when I worked in an office.
Yeah, I understand that fully, because when I first moved down here, that was the first time I had not worked in an office. And for the first 2 weeks, the amount I was able to produce, because people weren't coming into my office 10, 12 times a day going, "Hey, can you help me? Hey, how do you do?" That it almost blew my mind to a degree, because I was like, wow, I didn't realize how much work I was losing every day.
Yeah. See, and that's when you take all that extra efficiency and you start a YouTube channel or a shop or something. You start your side hustle.
And you talk to Steve from Steve Makes Everything.
I mean, you'll know when it's time to retire. Like my wife still works. I don't know why, but she said every once in a while she'll have a bad day and she'll go, "That's it, I'm going to retire." And I'll say, "Okay, what are you going to do when you retire?" The first time I asked her, she was stunned. It was like, "What do you mean? What am I going to do? I'm going to retire." If you just sit on the sofa all day and surf Facebook or whatever, you're going to die young, right? So I think she's finally gotten to the point where she knows she has to have a plan, because a lot of people don't plan, right? And they just stop working, and then it's like, what do I do now? I already knew what I was going to do, so I was already setting it up, and me not showing up for work was like, okay, it's like I'm on permanent vacation now.
And I think my transition will be easy as well.
You think it's 5 years, but you'll know, right? I was fine. I was ready to quit, but I wasn't going to quit. And then my boss called me up one day and said, this was right after New Year's in 3 years ago. And he said, I want you to come to North Carolina. Now, I've been to North Carolina many times to head office, and it was like, it's not really an issue, but it snapped, right? And I just said, no, I'm not going. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, I've just decided I'm going to quit. I'm going to retire.
So, yeah, well, like
See,
I said,
it was just,
I've got that.
and
got
that
that
moment
going,
will happen, right? It'll happen, and you'll just, that'll be the time it's time to go, and it's just, that's it.
Well, one final question for you. With your vast career in this kind of field and in crafts in general, and for example, the way that they are pushing for people who don't get into this kind of thing, they're just sitting at their house and all of a sudden they see a laser commercial and think, oh, that's great. The way Xtool does their programs and stuff is set up for people to start that. Where do you see us going the next 10 years, say? What do you think? Are we going to craft ourselves out? Or is it just going to continue to move forward?
I think so. I did a video a while back about diode lasers. That not necessarily diode lasers, but the companies who make diode lasers are going to start disappearing. And as a result of that, certainly some chunk of diode lasers are going to go away. But I did that, and people argued with me. And that was pretty close to a year ago. And look how many fewer diode laser companies you hear about now, right? There's just a lot of them are going. And I don't think it's in part it's because the diode laser market was saturated, right? You could buy a $300 diode laser and you may not even know how to turn it on, but it was cheap, so you bought one. And that same thing happened to a lesser extreme with 3D printers about 2 years before that. And now, like, there were hundreds of 3D printer companies. And now when you think about 3D printer companies, you think Bamboo, Creality, maybe the one you have. What is it?
FlashForge.
Yes.
Yeah, FlashForge. Yeah.
There's not many, right? And they, every once in a while, some little startup will come by and poke out a new 3D printer that might be innovative, but it's kind of found its balance. And like, anybody who wanted a 3D printer has one now, right? Or several in some cases. And the same things happen with diode lasers. It kind of happened in CO2 lasers before that with the K40s. But then there was this kind of renaissance where you started getting CO2 lasers with bigger workspaces and more power. And so, but I think, if you look at, Xtool, once they kind of came out with the P2S, which is that one behind me, that was kind of the end of the road for CO2 lasers. Now, there's a few coming out. I actually have one stuck in customs right now, but there's a few of them. But they're not. What they are is diode laser companies who realize they're at the end of the life of diode lasers, and now they're trying to do something else. Yeah. And like, any of the ones I've seen recently are actually diode laser companies that are moving to CO2s. Or they're moving to fiber lasers, because now everybody's got a fiber laser, right? WeCreate has one, and EM Smart. There's just a pile of these things, and the same thing will happen in fiber lasers. The next big one is, UV lasers are certainly, all the rage right now. I was talking to Xtool today, and they said the F2 Ultra UV is their most popular laser, which is interesting. I think the next big wave is, well, UV printers started it with things like the Eufy Make. Xtool is going to have one longer. Omtech has one. But after that, I think we're going to start to see convergence. And I'm talking to a company right now that has what is actually a UV printer, but it looks a lot like a 3D printer from an output perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about that, and just the other night, Clack and Steve were talking about how these companies are putting 2 or 3 different options inside these machines now, and
Yeah,
what does that hold down the road? And the conversation became basically that if you put 2 or 3 things in that same machine, then it's not good at any of them ultimately.
right.
It may be
it's
okay
terrible
at
at
all of
everything,
them,
right?
right? Yeah.
And sometimes they're putting things together that don't make sense, right? Like a CNC with a laser. There are use cases, right? If I wanted to laser engrave something huge, fine. But you're putting a piece of wood on a big wooden platform to do engraving. Things get out of control and you burn your house down because you've cut through the material and you've burned your spoil board, right? Like it, or with the laser in the 3D printer, right? You take a printer that's designed to lay down hot plastic. It likes to be clean, and you put a laser in there that's going to make dust galore, right? It just doesn't make sense to me. Now people have like the laser module for the bamboo printers and say it works okay, but it's like, but then it can't be a 3D printer when it's being a laser, right? So like I go to my shop and I'll have 4 or 5 machines running at the same time. I can't do that if they're all in one box.
If you build something that will do all those things, it will be so expensive you wouldn't be able to buy it anyway. Because, like you said, if you're using a laser and a CNC has to be pretty stout in order to withstand the pressures that bit's going through that wood, versus what the laser needs to finesse in order to do what it needs to do.
Yeah, my Onefinity, you can get a laser module for it, and it's like the whole drivetrain of a Onefinity Elite is so over-engineered to drive a little laser module, right? Like it's just such a waste of resources. But it's when it's doing some kind of a laser project, I can't have it making money as a CNC machine. It's a one machine at a time kind of thing, even though they're all in the box. So it's not good from a scale perspective. It's not good from a cost perspective. And in the end, things don't generally work all that well. So, but I do see technologies merging together, not in 2 separate tools, as new tools.
Right. Yeah. Well, Steve, it's an hour and 18 minutes in. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. And I appreciate you coming on here. Anything else you want to tell everybody before we get off here for the day?
Not really. I will say, like I said, if you ever need YouTube guidance, just let me know, because I've been through the mill. Clack is on. I'm sure he'll answer questions too. I don't understand. I think anyone who says, I know exactly how the YouTube algorithm works, are lying to you. Because
but there's videos all the time to tell you that.
Well, I know. The thing is, so I had last July, I was pushing, 40,000 users, 40,000 subscribers. And then by the end of and it took me 5 years to get there, right to that point. And by the end of the year, I had almost 100,000. And it's like, I don't know what happened. I made the same kinds of videos all the time, and all of a sudden YouTube started pushing them to bigger audiences. And it's like, I was doing the same thing I was always doing. So I can't explain it, but there are things I know that the so-called YouTube experts promote that don't actually work. They actually are detracting from people succeeding in some cases.
Right.
I'm
Well,
happy to help
thank you.
anybody if they want to get going, because YouTube is easy, of course.
Well, I want to thank you again for coming on tonight and giving us a little bit of your background and telling us how you ended up getting into the crafting world and ended up teaching all of us what you've taught us to this point. And appreciate everybody that was in the chat over here. I didn't really call you out much because we were talking about Steve and his life to this point and that kind of thing. But appreciate all of those coming out as well.
Thanks for having me, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I'll happily
Y'all
come
have a
back
wonderful-
if you want to invite me back.
So and just right quick, I'll put out. I know there's a couple on here that have been on my show already, and a couple of them that are going to be coming up. If you'd like to tell a little bit of your story, please let me know, because that's what I'm doing. I want to hear people's story. I want to see how you started, where you came from, and then ultimately how you got to where you are, because that's of an interest to me. And if it doesn't bring a lot of people in to subscribe, that's fine too. I just really enjoy talking to everybody. So everybody have a wonderful evening, and I appreciate y'all watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Chris.
Order forms on the workbench, wish list stacked to the sky. He's engraving Merry Christmas on a stainless steel tie. Tiny boots on the pedals, elves yell one more run. They're